Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Closing the Gap statement delivered by Prime Minister Tony Abbott was an important moment in this parliament, an important moment of personal reflection in my political career so far. Let me recap why the Prime Minister's speech is significant to all of us as Australians and why it's significant to me personally and also as the member for Robertson. In doing so, I'd like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal and the Ngambri peoples, who are the traditional custodians of the Canberra area, and also the Darkinjung and Guringai peoples, who are the traditional custodians of my local community region, and pay respect to the elders, past and present, of all Australia's Indigenous peoples. There is, quite crucially, a focus on children and young people in Indigenous communities. The target to halve the gap in child mortality within a decade is so far on track to be met. We must not relent in our pursuit of this goal. In my electorate of Robertson, there were more than 3,000 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people at the time of the last census, almost half of them under the age of 20. Helping this age group is often about education. Closing the gap in my electorate and around the nation is about getting kids to school, then on to employment. This can take on a variety of forms. In Robertson, our Indigenous population is supported by a number of local organisations, including organisations such as the Darkinjung Land Council and the Mingaleta Aboriginal Corporation based out on the peninsula. They do terrific work in our community. Robertson is also home to the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Skills Development Association's Dance Academy, or NAISDA as it's more commonly called. NAISDA graduates are positive role models for Indigenous youth, not just in my electorate, but right around our nation. I commend NAISDA for their goal to develop opportunities, self-development and independence in their students, and their commitment to encouraging their students to maintain strong links to their cultural backgrounds. NAISDA Chairman, Dr Warren Mundine, is also head of the Prime Minister's Indigenous Advisory Council. Dr Mundine has called on the Prime Minister to close the gap on school attendance by the end of this year, 4 years ahead of the 2019 deadline. There are other organisations and programs in my electorate that also seek, in their own way, to help close the gap. One such program is organised by Gosford City Council, which arranges a sport and cultural exchange to Walgett for Aboriginal students enrolled in local primary schools. The students play in the Ricky Walford Shield Rugby League and the Jenny Wright Shield Netball Carnival and visit a cultural centre where they hear traditional storytelling and learn more about Indigenous culture. Gosford Council also runs an Indigenous Surf Carnival, a summer surf program targeting young Aboriginal people on the Central Coast. The program includes 3 water safety and learn to surf programs and a competition day, and is a great way to engage hundreds of young people while also ensuring they learn about water and beach safety. In fact, an Australian Sports Commission report found that this surf program and others like it makes a difference in other parts of the participants' lives. Such programs can help lead to less self-harm, less antisocial behaviour and less substance abuse. They also increase confidence and self-esteem, they help to develop social skills, and they result in better behaviour at home and in the classroom. Unfortunately, there's been very little improvement towards halving the gap in reading, writing and numeracy. It's apparent that Indigenous employment has, if anything, slipped backwards over the past few years. That's where my moment of personal reflection really hit home to me. While not claiming to be an expert on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander issues, in fact quite the opposite, I was really moved by the Prime Minister's statement in the House that day. As a mother, as a former teacher, and as someone who has mentored young people in a range of voluntary roles over the last 20 years or more, I've got a passion to see all our young people have great hope for the future. Initiatives like those I've mentioned today and heard from my parliamentary colleagues are inspiring as we seek to work together to build hope and opportunity. Madam Deputy Speaker, my own work background is quite diverse. While my first full-time job was as a teacher back at my former high school in Narara, I've since gone on to work in politics and also in the corporate sector. I've come to understand how education plays a vital role in providing opportunities, particularly work opportunities for our young people. Each of my own work opportunities was afforded to me because of my schooling and university degree, as well as my skills and then subsequent work experience. But beyond all this is the importance of advocacy and taking a stand. Closing the gap has always been a bipartisan goal, and so our successes and our failures are also shared. As the Prime Minister has said, our challenge is now to turn our good intentions into better outcomes. Today, I commit myself to being an advocate in my electorate to close the gap, so that these intentions and outcomes help people right across the Central Coast and indeed around Australia to thrive.